I also am fascinated by, like, band dynamics. I always think are very interesting because obviously, it's creative. So people get very, kind of wedded to their artistic vision. It's also a business, so you get a lot of, tension there. People grow and change. What people want, changes. And that's not even getting into when relationships start happening, the drugs, I mean, there's so many aspects to band dynamics that I just find very fascinating. So I was interested in that by itself. And then a lot of my favorite movies also have to do with like music and bands. And like I always think of That Thing You Do as one of my favorite movies that I think depicts band dynamics really well. I love Spinal Tap. I mean, as funny as it is, I think it's so real, like it's so true. Some of what they have to deal with, where they just have to realize that they're not as relevant as they used to be. And it's like how that weighs on each member differently. I think it's like the funniest movie ever and also like one of the realest movies ever. Uh, so yeah, when I was writing Never Been Shipped, I was really interested in the idea of this band that kind of had like this brief, bright spark, where they were part of the emo scene. They hit it just the right time. They got to perform one of their songs like on a TV show. I always love when like bands play like prom on a fictional TV show. So that's kind of the idea. So they had this one hit that really, popped off for them. And in a way, it's that thing that one thing I always think about is that sometimes success can be just as dangerous as failure because it can just warp things and get people all twisted up. And so I really thought about this band that had this brief, bright spark when they were really young, kind of too young to fully know what to do with it. And then it affected all of them in different ways, and it really splintered them. And then also their personal dynamics and stuff. And so now the idea is that there's, a cruise, and it's a cruise for the TV show. So it's not even a cruise for them. They're just a side show on the cruise. It's a cruise for that TV show that they were on, and they're being asked to reunite to perform their song at the prom, just like they did on the show. Um, and one storyline in the book is, like a couple of the people are like, should we just reunite, like for real? And should we do this? And a couple of the people are like, no, like it was a nightmare the first time we did it. And this cruise has not actually taught me that it's not going to be a nightmare again. So I thought that whole world was very interesting. And it was a lot of what, I was thinking about when I wrote Never Been Shipped. And the band is called Electric O with an exclamation point because that's like the emo era. That's what you had to do is put little punctuation in your band name. John is the guitarist. He was the second guitarist, which is, part of his dynamic is that he always felt like he wasn't there to play lead. He was there to kind of be the steady guy backing everything up. Um, and then Micah is the lead singer, and she is just kind of everything that you want out of a lead singer, where she's very dynamic and she's very charismatic and she has a great voice and she has great stage energy and presence and she had her style, and it was always. And so there is a lot of that resentment that bubbles up, especially with more insecure members of the band, where they're resentful of how much attention she gets, and as not only the front person but also as a woman, the only woman in the band. But then meanwhile, that puts a lot of pressure on her because music, especially 2010, it's very male dominated. And so I think a lot of the band members didn't necessarily appreciate how much pressure that put on her, even though she was also getting all the attention. It's like good and bad attention. And then the lead guitarist is Ryder, who is also Micah's ex. They dated, and he's very toxic, and we don't like Ryder. Um, and he just thinks that he's God's gift. Like he can play a good lick, and so he thinks that that entitles him to be a complete asshole, which I think we've all known that guy. And then there's Steve, who's the drummer, and Steve's just kind of a happy-go-lucky guy. He's just there to make music. He's there to, have fun. In some ways, he was really fun to write because some of the band dynamics don't really touch him. He's like, I'm just here to like beat the drums, like have some fun, So do a reunion, not do a reunion, get drunk on a cruise ship. Like, listen, man, like I'm just here to chill. And then there's Frankie, who is the bassist, and there's kind of a long-standing joke with the bassist that they, don't contribute as much to the band or whatever. But I always think that the bassist is in many ways like almost like one of the solid, like like the spinal cord of the band in a way. Like you need that rhythm section, and you also need that person who's just kind of like there underneath it all. And Frankie is a good person to give a lot of perspective because they um didn't get wrapped up in the band dramatics in quite the same way, and they have a little bit more of a reasonable perspective of like it was a job and we did it and we were successful and then we weren't. And now, I'm still out there making music and it doesn't have to be that deep, which is something that both John and Micah really struggle with because they're like, no, music is everything and it's so important. And they put a lot of themselves into it. So John and Micah, they've been friends since they were kids. They met in seventh grade. And they've just been, best friends. And music has always been really important to them. Making music, listening to music, and the way I saw it is sometimes, we all have those people that it's almost like it's not that we take them for granted. I think sometimes with a friends to lovers type of premise, the idea is like you always took this person for granted and you didn't see what was in front of you. For them, it's almost like they knew what they had and they didn't want to mess it up. They knew that this person is so special to me and their friendship means so much to me that the last thing I would ever want to do is anything that would ruin it. And so they kind of never actually get together, even though they both have feelings for each other. And she, like I said, she gets with the other guitarist who's, the toxic nightmare. And in some ways, I think, it's one of those things, I think it's very relatable where you might question, like, well, why would you be with that guy and not with the guy who, treats you well and that you really care about and that you have this special bond with? But in a way, it's almost like, well, that guy is easier because he doesn't have the power to hurt me on the same level that it would hurt me if this ended. Um, but, because of that dynamic, it breaks the band up and, gets to all this. So I really loved, like you said, the cruise ship was part of the inspiration for it was that I actually went on several Paramore cruises because I'm a big Paramore fan and they were a lot of fun. And I just always kind of thought, like, what could I write that would be this vibe because it's so good. And so I loved the idea of getting them on a cruise, and I love the idea of, like, getting John and Micah back together where they can't deny what they are to each other, and they can't deny all these things that they have, like, wanted to say and wanted, to be with each other. And so, yeah, it was very satisfying to write, their reunion.